am very offended when people who have the means, who have the privilege, who have the time, who have the opportunity do that. We can talk about Kanye telling us that he does not read.
Also, when you said I hadn't read this book, I actually haven't read any book. Reading is like eating Brussels sprouts for me. And talking is like getting the Giorgio Baldi corn ravioli. like a good conversation is Mike Howe, that invented the ripsaw with his brother Jeff Howe, was saying that when his mom texts him like long paragraphs, he reads the first sentence and the last sentence. This person and his brother invented the fastest track vehicle. They put it in G.I. Joe. They have government contracts. This guy is a full-on engineer, works with all geniuses, and for practical, not opinionated, practical technologies. And he only reads the first sentence and the last. And what do you think my response was? Same.
No. Absolutely not. I mean, okay, there's something to be said for the elitism, the intellectual elitism that some of us, I'm deeply in the category, participate in when we exalt a certain kind of learning, when we exalt taking the time to dive into theoretical, complex text. It is inherently exclusionary and inherently elitist. We can acknowledge that. But also, and I think it's important, Kanye West is the child of the first chair of the English department at Chicago State University. Kanye West is a billionaire, married to a billionaire. So there is certainly some elitism that we have to check ourselves on when we're just like, oh, you haven't read this for sure. I also think a lot about the fact that my love for reading and love for words was nurtured and nourished and encouraged by people who didn't go to college. My grandparents, some of them didn't graduate high school. None of them went to college. When I would be babysat by my play grandma and grandpa, that's a Black thing. If you're not Black, you don't know what I mean by play grandma and grandpa, but I only called them grandma and grandpa. And my play grandma is 81 right now. She would say, okay, it's reading time. Everybody get out your book. Stay at home wife her whole life. It's me and my play cousin. Okay, it's reading time. I think a lot of Black people have that story. An appreciation, an emphasis on, it is such a privilege for you to just be able to sit down and like take this in. So I am really offended. I do get like real personally offended when people make any claims about Black people not valuing literature or education or reading or taking time to pour into their children with regard to the intellectual mind, because that's bullshit. Like, not only anecdotally, but also empirically bullshit. But I am very offended when people who have the means, who have the privilege, who have the time, who have the opportunity do that. That's offensive to me. The idea that I don't read any books, I just participate in conversations. If you're doing it right, reading is a conversation. One of the reasons why it is so important for me to read, and if I'm not doing good reading, I'm not doing good writing, is because when I am reading, I am continually in conversation with myself and also with the writer of the book or the article. We're going back and forth. We're wrestling. They can't speak back, but maybe they speak back in the next chapter or the next page. But also, there's something so important about developing the habit of reading. It's also about solitude, quietude, being able to sit with yourself and your thoughts, not requiring the constant external stimulation. That's what makes reading so important to think. Yeah, I do have a big problem with that. The other thing about it is when we're talking about the importance of reading with regard to somebody like Kanye, who seems to be, or we talked about this with Jay-Z, people who seem to only be engaging with a very narrow set of inputs. When you're only engaging with a very narrow set of inputs, all of your outputs are going to be similar and potentially wrong in similar ways. Yes, reading allows me, Kimberly, who has time and privilege to engage with lots and lots of literature, to say, okay, I'm going to go this person from this background and this person from this background and this person from this background and time period and country and whatever. And I'm going to wrestle with their thoughts. I'm going to engage in conversation with them because I would never come across them ever in my life, ever. Couldn't. They're dead. We could never talk. You've been dead for 200 years. That's important. When he's talking about, I get more of it out of a conversation, he's saying, oh, I'm just going to talk to all of the richest people in the world, the richest, most successful people in the world. So silly to me. And the idea that people are signing their kids up for that. Now, look, I watched the entire interview because I'm trying to loose myself from soundbite culture. So I did watch the entire interview, and I actually do think that Kanye has some interesting thoughts around the ways that we can change education, adapt education for the needs of children in 2022. I actually do think that he has some interesting thoughts around accessibility. But when we're talking about schooling, I'm really disgusted by that. I am, because he is using his enormous wealth and power and influence to rope all of these people in with no regard to what the potential consequences of that are. The other thing, we also live in the Audible era. When I say reading, I like the quiet part of, opening a book sometimes. But also, there's the other part of listening to somebody else read it out. I've taken notes on many an audiobook. Pause it. Oh, what is that? Oh, how do I feel about that? Oh, she just said that. Oh no. Totally possible. There are ways for us to encourage people to engage with a diverse array of ideas that's not completely inaccessible. But just talking, first of all, most people aren't even really that good at communicating like that. And most people are not good listeners. So the idea that it's stupid.